Uh, Today, I will be talking about food security in India during COVID-19 epidemic. First, of course, lockdown and its impact. As health professionals, we always believe saving lives is of highest priority, and this is what happened. In January 2020, China reported that what began as a respiratory illness in Wuhan city within 3 months spread to entire Hubei province, across China and across continents. China, Italy, and Spain reported that their hospitals are overflowing with persons requiring admissions for severe respiratory illness, and that case fatality rates in admitted cases ranged between 16 and 20%. Alarming situation to a country with 1.3 billion population and severe overcrowding across the country. It was hardly surprising, therefore, that India imposed a strict lockdown to delay the spread of SARS-CoV-2 infection in the country on 25th March 2020. At that time, the daily new cases were 56 for this entire country of 1.3 billion. Total reported cases were less than 600. The lockdown did give time for the health services to reorganize so that they could take up the job of screening, admitting and treating cases, and also adapt appropriate quarantine contact tracing measures. These did result both in reduction in number of cases and in minimizing the number of deaths. But as has been stated already, lockdown brought economic activities to a standstill and endangered food security for millions. So we did not have any option but to begin a phased unlocking with precautions to prevent the spread of SARS-CoV-2 infection. These initiatives were taken up in June 2020. Cardinal principles during unlocking were prevent further job loss in urban areas, increase support to rural employment through NREGA. Try to work from home wherever possible. Try to enable children to learn from home. Leave home only when necessary. Avoid overcrowded places and congregations. Use masks, ensure physical distancing and hand washing to prevent spread of infection. There was a fair amount of adherence to these precautions. It is never possible to have 100% compliance, but by and large, urban overcrowded areas did follow many of these practices. Despite these precautions, there was a steady rise in the cases. But here again, life is relative. If you look at cases per million or deaths per million, India had a relatively low caseload and deaths per million. In addition, we are rather proud of the fact that case fatality rates in India always was around 1.5 in spite of ups and downs in the number of cases that health service has to cope with. We really started unlocking in a more vigorous fashion and started doing economic activity resurgence by October 1st. And strangely, there has been a progressive fall in the relative new cases since this time. This is despite the fact that October, November are festival seasons in India. There is overcrowding and relative non-compliance with precautions across the country. Contrary to the trend in USA and Europe, fall in number of new cases continued even after the onset of winter. And this winter has been pretty severe in northern parts of the country. Currently, the reported number of cases, new cases, are similar to those reported in June 2020. But some data from sero surveillance suggest, mind you, this is not yet the nationwide sero surveillance data. We have bits and pieces of sero surveillance in several urban areas. But the suggestion is that proportion of people with antibodies due to prior infection may be as high as 60% in Indian population. We do not know clearly which of this is responsible for the well-defined fall and sustained fall in new cases over the last 3 months. But we know one thing: higher mobility after unlocking resulted in relatively higher number of cases in most countries. But in India, unlocking was not followed by this rise in number of new cases. This might be partly because lockdown continues even today for education, entertainment, and activities related to meeting. It is ages since I attended any scientific meeting physically. Compliance with mask wearing and physical distance is high, especially in congested urban localities. So, what is the take-home message? So far, so good. We don't understand why, but we seem to be having a respite. But this respite should only give us the stimulus to get the health system back to providing care both for COVID and for non-COVID related health problems. And this respite should be used for accelerating the employment and economic recovery. We'll now move on to see the lockdown and its impact on food security. For obvious reasons, most of the data are process indicators. It is too early to assess impact. Too few surveys have been conducted, and therefore, all data is essentially on processes that have happened during the year 2020. India had imposed one of the most stringent lockdowns between March and May 2020. It was 100%. Literally every single nook and cranny, main streets and highways were locked down. USA imposed a lockdown which was 70% when they had more than 1 lakh cases. More important than that is the fact that even after unlock began, the conditions of lockdown has been sustained at 75% till October, and thereafter over 70% till December. That is, still education, entertainment, restaurants, congregations, meetings are all not happening. Whether this is a major reason why relatively few cases are there today is something that we need to ponder about. I thought pictures tell you stories much better than 1,000 words. And here you can see the bustling construction activity laden 4-lane traffic are all empty as if it's somewhere in Mars. In India, we know internal migration for economic reasons is very, very common. There are clear-cut areas from which outward migration occurs. Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Orissa are some of the major places from which outward migration occurs. Maharashtra, Delhi, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, and Gujarat are places to which migrants go. In one fell stroke, when lockdown was imposed, 1/4 of the workforce in informal sector in urban areas lost their jobs. The impact of lockdown on migrant population was really tremendous. 83% did not find work. 80% ran out of rations. Because of lockdown, they had no capacity to return back to their villages. So what do? They tried by whatever means that were possible to get back home, because food was a problem, but shelter was another problem. Where will they stay when they didn't have money to pay the room rent for their small tenements? So they had no choice but to try to return to their villages. They found any and every mode of transport. Many walked with families, and walked with children. This was widely reported in India and really brought a huge number of interventions, not only on the part of the government. And what was very touching was on the part of people. People anywhere, everywhere, across the roads that these people, migrant laborers and their families, were traversing. What were the lockdown relief measures? All countries responded to COVID pandemic by providing cash transfers and kind transfers. South Asia essentially responded with kind transfers. Over 3/4 in India received assistance mainly as food grains or cooked food to ward off food insecurity and hunger. But cash transfers and employment programs in a country like India was not at all insignificant. Direct cash transfers were effected for 420 million individuals, 42 crores, about a third of the population. More than 20 crores, 200 million women got cash transferred to their bank accounts. Cash support was provided to building and construction workers, and additional working capital was provided to farmers through the cooperative agency NABARD. Because of widespread IT-enabled services, the pace of cash transfer to the person actually getting the transfer was swift. This does not mean that all people who needed the money got the money, that all cash transfers happened without a hitch, or that inevitable leakages were totally plugged. But they were kept within reasonable limits, which is all that can be expected when you deal with a country which is as vast and as varied as India is. In addition, additional allocations were made to employment programs to improve employment and earnings. The Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Program received additional funds. In addition, a special program called Garib Kalyan Rozgar Abhiyan was launched on 20th June to cover a period of 125 days in 116 districts in 6 states. This was aimed at providing employment and livelihood opportunities to migrant workers who returned to their villages in rural areas during COVID pandemic. A specific group was identified and efforts were made to provide work to them so that they can earn, and that will improve their purchasing power. Providing food during the lockdown was another major intervention that India did. In this, we were very fortunate that food production in India has been increasing as projected in the last 5 years. There were adequate stock of food grains. in 2013, India enacted the globe's first National Food Security Act. This legislation provided for highly subsidized food grains to 2/3 of India's population as a legal entitlement. Availability of adequate food grains and food security to the country's millions affected by COVID-related lockdown problems in the country. They were all provided with 35 kg of cereals, 5 kg of pulses, free of cost between 1st April and 31st November 2020. Some states are continuing to make provisions for free food grains even today. In addition to this, almost all cities and towns in the country organized the midday meal kitchens to cook and provide 2 hot-cooked meals to all those who came to food distribution centers. These measures ensured that despite massive unemployment and reduction in wages, the poorer segments of population were able to ward off hunger. You can clearly see the people who have come and collected their rations. As you can see, you see poorly dressed poor people, but they are not wasted, they are not famine-stricken, and they are carrying adequate food grains for a fortnight for their family. Hot cooked meals were served. This is a school in which an NGO had supplied hot cooked meal to women and children. Similarly, NGOs and citizens group cooked and served meals twice a day in many cities and towns. I would again like to point out, these are organized activities wherein there was considerable amount of organization, lack of chaos, and cleanliness. When the migrants reached their villages, they were initially kept in temporary shelters away from the village because the villagers feared that living in crowded localities in the city, they might have been infected in the city and they might bring infection into the villages. So they were quarantined, if you want to use the word. Some places where temporary shelters were provided for them outside the village limits. After 2 weeks, they were accepted into the village. But because they didn't have employment, they were food insecure. The community, the village community, provided them food not only during quarantine, but also after they were taken into the families, because the families themselves did not have adequate food to feed the additional migrant members who have come back home. In villages, some got both cooked food and rations. It is estimated that all these measures prevented hunger both in urban and rural areas to an estimated 60 to 17 million migrant families. That is fine, they didn't starve. But how long can they continue there in the villages without remunerative employment? So, with the revival of urban employment starting from August, September, and October, many of the migrants started returning to the cities. Jobs there were not plentiful. Often they were temporary and at a lower wages. But provision of free food grains and free food till end of November 2020 helped even the returned migrant workers to urban areas to ward off hunger. When train services were resumed, many state and central government provided the migrants the money to buy train tickets to get back home. In addition, Returning migrants were provided with food grains and cooked food for the journey. So the highest priority was provided to ensuring the food reaches the hungry all through the lockdown, the travails that happened thereafter, and also when we are trying to get back life towards normalcy. If this is the story of lockdown and phased unlocking, what do we have in future? How do we learn to live with SARS-CoV-2 infection? And what is the road to economic recovery? The Economic Survey of India was presented to the Parliament on 29th of January. And most of the data that I'm going to present on this road to recovery come from Economic Survey. The Economic Survey acknowledged that India faced a severe demand and supply side economic shock in the first and second quarter of the financial year 2021. There was demand shock because of reduced investment, reduced demand for non-essentials, and reduced consumption of essentials because of wage and income loss. So this part, to some extent, reduction in consumption due to wage and income loss, essentially food, was tackled by the measures taken by the center, state, and the people themselves. On the supply side, labor supply shock.
Yes,
Majority of laborers cannot work from home. There was disruption of supply chain. And both demand and supply shock aggravated each other. The stringency of lockdown was across the world related to GDP growth decline. India, which had the most stringent lockdown, also faced the most stringent economic loss. Unlocking in a phased manner to some extent has reduced unemployment, but as I said earlier, the wages are still very low. But Economic Survey, green in color, is optimistic. It assures us the worst period is behind us. There are green shoots in all sectors, in all economic activity, and the country will have a V-shaped economic recovery, and projected GDP growth for year 21-22 is 11.1%. Of course, if you look at the difference, starting with the base year 2021 as low as minus 7.7, this is not huge amount, but it is something. There are, however, another set of economists who worry, yes, there will be economic recovery, but will it be equitable and V-shaped, or will it be K-shaped and further widen inequalities? Time will only tell, and hopefully all of us who have been alerted by this possibility would strive to ensure that the recovery remains V-shaped and not K-shaped. The Economic Survey also makes one more statement. As compared to other regions in the world, India implemented the strictest lockdown and experienced the deepest dip in GDP. So, because of all this, currently India is witnessing a continuing decrease in cases. Vaccines are being made available. Economic activities in India will bounce back faster. And it's logical to explain that country may experience a steeper increase in GDP as compared to other regions of the world. Hope this does happen. Let's now look at economic access to food. Employment has always been the major worry for all of us. There was a steep reduction in employment in April 2020. But with unlocking, progressively there has been an improvement in employment. But even in December 2020, there is a 5% less employment as compared to pre-lockdown period. The gender disparity that Dr. Gustafson pointed out is very stark in India. Post-lockdown recovery was sustained in about 70% of men.
To enable the textile industry to become globally competitive, attract large investments, and boost employment generation, a scheme...
Will you please mute? Oh, sorry. 1/5 of the men, and the sustained recovery in women was only about 25%. 1/5 of men and over 1/2 of the women, there was no post-lockdown recovery. This gender inequality is something that we ought to really pay serious attention to. What happened to people who were salaried employment? These are small-scale surveys which need to be fleshed out in larger context, but it at least gives you some pointers. Among those who had salaried employment in December 2019, only about 40% continued in the same vein right through. Over 40% had to shift over to informal employment, and 1/6 of them were totally out of work. There was substantial reduction in monthly wages to all categories of worker. Permanent salaried employees, 13%. Temporary salaried employees faced 22.5% reduction in salaries. Casual employees, 1/4 reduction. And even self-employed persons suffered a drop in earnings. Over 1/3 of rural and 1/10 of urban population. You can see rural employment was not that badly impacted. Urban employment really had huge impact. The recovery rate was higher in urban employment as compared to rural employment, but this is partly because the rural employment was unaltered as compared to pre-COVID time. The proportion who remained unemployed is common both in urban and in rural areas. Both in urban and in rural areas, there has been a decline in post-lockdown earning as compared to pre-lockdown area. The reduction, of course, was more marked in urban areas, but please remember, the rural areas provide us all the food that we need, and we all recognize it for survival. To see that that group had a major suffering is something that we actually have to take great note of. What is happening to the unemployment rate? The Center for Monitoring Indian Economy is the source from which I have taken this data. As has been stated clearly, 1/5 was the employment loss in the months of April and May. There has been a progressive recovery both in urban and rural areas. But however, please note that even in 2020 December, unemployment rates were higher as compared to January 2020, both in urban and rural areas. Yet another criteria, NREGA enrollment, even as of December 2020 and January 2021 is high. That means unemployment is a still major problem. Economic access to food is affected by one another economic factor, that is food inflation. Let's look at food inflation. Unfortunately, over the last 2 years, food inflation was always higher as compared to general inflation. This continued during the COVID pandemic too. Both wholesale and retail food inflation continued to be high, and when combined with unemployment and wages falling down, inflation rendered economic access to food far more difficult, especially for persons working in informal sector at low wages. If you look at the contribution of CPIC, inflation in food and beverages was the one that contributed maximum to this. It's not only that food inflation as a whole has been high throughout the year. Please note that cereal inflation has been relatively low, but pulses and pulse-related products and vegetables have huge inflation across the year. This also animal food. These have nutritional implications much beyond hunger satisfaction. Finally, one way to look at it is not through foodstuffs, but what has been the cost of a vegetarian thali. Both in urban and rural areas, there has been an upward trend in the cost of this, and therefore, this will have some impact on the type of food consumed by families, especially among the lower segments. This will affect adversely pulses, vegetables, which are very important from nutrition point of view. Let us look at one green shoot, which keeps us all going. It is availability of food. The estimated fall in sectoral growth in the worst affected April to June quarter was the least in agricultural and allied areas. Adequate production and transport of foodstuffs was the major factor that enabled the government to initiate steps to prevent a steep increase in household food insecurity between April and December 2020. Trends in food production in rice and wheat crops over years and other food crops are shown in this picture. The source is Economic Survey of India. We are heading towards a very record high in terms of cereal production. Pulse production has been adequate. Procurement in rice and wheat and storage has been adequate right through the year 2020 and continued without any disruptions. Because of this, the country is enabled to export food grains to needy neighbors, and that includes Myanmar and China. Food grain production and procurement continue to grow, but please note, rural incomes have not shown a similar trend. It is imperative that agriculture and allied activities are made more remunerative so that the productivity continues to increase. This is a critical input needed to ensure food security at home. Export to neighboring countries needing food grains will help them to also provide food security to their citizens. It comes under the same heading, vaccines to ward off COVID, food grains to ward off hunger, and neighborhood comes first. What about vegetable and fruit production? We have been growing vegetables and fruits. Farmers have taken it to their heart that they should diversify production. And today India produces its number 1 or number 2 in all vegetable production. We are not talking about malls, but here are roadside vendors. And this is winter 2020 in Delhi. Fresh, nice vegetables are available. But farmers have faced huge problems in transporting and marketing vegetables. Wastage of vegetables was phenomenal during lockdown. farmers were adversely affected because of wastage related loss. Majority of consumers were unable to afford. The prices shot up because adequate vegetables were not reaching urban markets. So vegetable consumption suffered. How do we learn to live and cope with SARS-CoV-2 epidemic? India is opening up the lockdown in a phased manner. We must congratulate the health sector for having coped with providing care for persons with SARS-CoV-2 infection across the year. Cases and deaths have remained low. There had been a steady fall in confirmed cases and deaths, but vigilance is needed. We do not know whether the second wave will come. If so, when? What will be its magnitude? And will the second wave bring in its wake a higher spreading rate and a higher mortality rate? These are things that we do not know, but health services have to be prepared to meet these eventualities. In the coming month, health services will also have to gear up to halt and reverse the trend in reduction in access to preventive and promotive care in MCH, disease control programs, elective procedures, and restore them to the pre-COVID-19 era level. This is essential to prevent increase in morbidity due to, and certainly maybe even mortality due to illnesses other than COVID-19. There is an urgent need to reinforce health education messages that all these efforts of the health sector require close cooperation of all citizens in terms of universal adherence to physical distancing, wearing masks to reduce the risk of transmission of all respiratory infections, including COVID-19, in healthcare settings. With the resumption of economic activities, there has been some improvement in economic indices. Focus will have to be on economic growth linked to employment and wage growth. Agriculture has been the sheet anchor which enabled the country to provide food for all the needy for over several months. Remunerative prices for foodstuffs, increased storage capacity to prevent gluts and distress sale, technology for processing vegetables to prevent wastage, adequate marketing facilities will enable agriculture to continue to be productive. We need to ensure that people who toil to keep us food secure do get adequate economic returns for their hard work. There are fears that resumed economic growth may not be similar across sectors and may widen disparities. These fears should be allayed. I would end by a fervent personal plea. The COVID epidemic has shown us what is essential for life and what, at best, are icing on the cake, which are nice if they are there, but not essential. It should be our endeavor to protect the essential ones. And what are those essential ones? As I said, food is the fundamental basis of all living. We need to ensure that even though it today accounts for no more than 20% of GDP, Indian GDP, agriculture and allied sectors are given the respect that is due, need all attention that they need, and ensure that they do get all inputs that are necessary for them to continue being as productive as they are. The second is health. India's health services, despite their numerous inadequacies, disparities, and problems, have played a vital role in ensuring that essential health care needed in the COVID era is provided. Please consider the desperate need for ensuring health of all the citizens by enabling the country's citizens to access universal health care. This should be considered as yet another essential prerequisite for healthy living. And 5% GDP is not too much to spend on such an important endeavor. So, would efforts that are being made in 2021 onwards keep these important sectors also in focus, so that the lessons that we learned during COVID epidemic would in fact serve us much, much better in the coming decade. Thank you very much. Okay, I would now try to answer some of the questions that have been posed. Were there any specific efforts to influence economic stimulus packages post-COVID to influence food insecurity and programs? Economic stimulus packages were focused essentially on small and medium enterprises to increase economic activity in these sectors, which provide much greater employment potential than major enterprises. But, any investment in them will take time for that to mature, that to become operational, and that in turn to become fruitful in terms of providing better food security to the families of people who are employed there. Immediate essential interventions to reduce food insecurity were provision of free food grains, provision of free cooked meals, increasing allocations for both NREGA and also for the Garib Kalyan Yojana. So that is where I think people benefited a lot in the immediate COVID period. That is, however, not what is going to help you in terms of improving economic activity, increasing GDP. So those aspects should now receive greater attention. The second question is excellent insight into impact of pandemic in Indian situation. Since feeding programs were disrupted during COVID, especially for children, midday meal and ICDS, what will be the impact on nutritional status of children? Excellent question. We do not know the answer. At the moment, I think what we know is ICDS tried providing some take-home rations. We do not know the reach. We need to get data on how many, what are the areas which had better coverage, etc. So process indicators from ICDS. Midday meal program, of course, was totally interrupted because schools are not open. We do not have any information at all on nutritional status, as I said. Our advantage is that we have 2019 National Family Health Survey 5. If we conduct a survey perhaps in 21-22, or perhaps 22, 23. That will provide us nutritional impact on vulnerable groups, vulnerable age groups, mothers, children in a disaggregated fashion. Next question, Dr. Gustafson. When migrants returned to rural areas, was there an increase in infection that was registered? We do not have an answer to this. We all feared it. We communicated it to the villagers, and that's why they quarantined them, and their quarantine efforts were damn good. Okay, I think we should learn from them. They kept them away from the village, but fed them, clothed them, gave them adequate warm clothes when winter came. So that was a very, very good demonstration what people can do to their own folks under all constraints. What happened to infection? We do not know really what is happening to infections in rural areas. The serosurveillance surveys is the method by which we may be able to disaggregate at a later date what could have been the infection rates pre-return, post-return. The second question is there a possible explanation now about why antibodies are as widespread as 60% in the population? Dr. Gustafson, this is nothing new. Bombay had taken up serosurveillance in limited urban population. Dharavi, which is the greatest slum in Asia, recorded a 60% positivity rate somewhere in their somewhere in October, November. So congested living and high level of city infections both contributed to this. In the same city, residential areas occupied by upper income group had a prevalence of about 20%. So those disparities exist. We are conducting more serosurveillance, but serial data would be required. There is also one question that you did not ask, but I would like to answer. There are many of us who have been collecting serum samples over time in smaller population groups. So you do have a longitudinal capacity to do longitudinal seroprevalence studies. Pre-COVID in 2019 December, pre-COVID March 2020, and COVID October, December, and 2021 January and more. We also have nutritional status data of smaller population groups. What has happened to them during lockdown? None of us have data, but post-lockdown from October onwards, nutrition data is available. Comparisons there would also enable us what is the magnitude of increase in severity and quantum of increase in terms of prevalence. So let us see what can be done over the next few months. We will keep coming back with all the knowledge that we are getting. Next question, Dr. Kurpal. We are all concerned that whatever GDP jumps up, social disparities will increase. Are there lessons from the past that we can use to mitigate this? I do not know. But my fervent plea with which I ended, that is, please support two vulnerable segments that I know. The rural agricultural residual population who produce food but are among the poorest in the lot in the country. We should look after their requirements in a sustainable fashion. I'm not saying food doles at all, but enable them to be productive, enable them to get remunerative employment right through the year. The second is, all of us do know health, irrespective of GDP and irrespective of other things, does help in keeping you well nourished. So universal access to healthcare should also receive due attention. At least it will have impact on two important segments, and that is the hope with which I go. I don't think there are any more questions.